Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. So today we're going to be doing a beginner sewing tutorial. So this right here you are going to make. So I say beginner, but this is honestly for anybody who is just trying to add an additional project to their sewing repertoire. So this is called a snap bag, and it's called a snap bag simply because when you open and close it, it snaps back together. So no zipper needed, no buttons, none of that. So all we're gonna do is add in some tape measure tape, just a regular old tape measure, and you're gonna have to get some sturdy scissors to cut these. But we're gonna take this, and this is what we're gonna use to make the band, and that's what's in there that makes it snap. All right, so let's get in gear. Let's get sewing, guys. So the pattern today that we're going to be using for this project is one that I got from a nearby fabric store in my area. You all won't need the pattern. I'm going to tell you exactly what pieces that you will be needing and the measurements. Today I am just going to be using old scraps from a skirt that I had gotten from the Goodwill for $1.20. So if you're doing something like this, you may have to do a little bit more cutting, but that's okay. For cutting, I highly recommend using quilt rulers. They are very easy to use and provide you with sharp edges that you can trace and cut along. And here are the pieces that you will be needing in the dimensions. Please pause the video if you need time to cut. You will also need some type of quilt batting, some kind of stabilizer, so you can also use fusible interfacing as well. Now you're going to place your main fabric on top of your stabilizer, just using one piece of your main fabric and one piece of your stabilizer. For the design that I am wanting, I'm just going to sew a line straight across the two materials, and then also I'm going to sew a line going across that line. If that makes sense, I will show you. Next, you're going to find your two pull tabs and you're going to cut them in half. As you can tell, I highly rely on my cutting mat to help me stay accurate with my measurements and cutting, and to make sure that I am cutting straight lines. And I definitely recommend you doing the same thing, because when you are cutting, you want to make sure it's as accurate as possible. So don't be afraid to utilize all the lines and the grids on your cutting mats. I know it looks kind of intimidating at first, but it will help you in the long run. The cutting mat that I am using here is just one that I found on Amazon. It was around $25. Now that you have your tabs cut in half, you are going to sew two of them together. Your pretty sides should be facing each other whenever you sew them together. I made a 3/8 inch seam allowance here, and now I'm going to take this and turn it inside out. I'm going to use my scissors just to make the end or the point a little bit more pointed. Be very careful if you're using very sharp scissors. You don't want to poke yourself because it's very easy to do. After you've been able to get the end of your tabs pointed, you're going to add a top stitch. Your top stitch is going to have 3/8 of an inch of a seam allowance again. After you're done with this tab, you're going to repeat to make your other tab. Once your two tabs are made, you're going to add one of your tabs onto the main fabric and the stabilizer. You will sew a line right along the edge here to attach the tab, and this is going to be something similar to a basting stitch. You're going to get right on the very edge. Try your best to stay on the fabric, but this is how we're going to keep the tab in place. When you get to the end of sewing your seam, you always want to remember to backstitch, which is the reverse button that is on your sewing machine. Adding a backstitch makes your seam super strong and just gives you extra security in so the seam doesn't come apart. Now we're going to add our contrasting fabric. This is going to be the top part of the bag where we're going to put the tape for the ruler in. You want to put the pretty side of your contrasting fabric facing or kissing the pretty side of your main fabric. It's going to go across the top of your main fabric and tab like this. I know it is kind of hard to tell my pretty side since my fabric is white on both sides, but my pretty side is facing inward. The ugly side is what you're going to add your seam on. Next, I am going to make a 1/2 inch sew allowance. Next, we're going to sew together the main fabric along with the contrasting fabric. And the seam allowance I used here was just a 1/2 inch, and we're going to sew all the way down to the end, and remember to backstitch here. Next, your lining fabric is going to be sewn on top of your contrasting fabric. Flip your contrasting fabric up, pretty side facing up, and then lay your liner fabric pretty side facing down. Keep in mind, my pretty side, both sides look the same, but you are going to put your pretty side facing down. Pretty sides are going to kiss. Once you have those sides together, you're going to pin them together so they're nice, secured, and even all the way around. Then add another seam across the top. Now you should have something that looks like this. You will go through all of those steps again to do your other side. Once your other side is done, you will put the two sides together with the pretty sides facing each other or inward. Do your best to match the two sides up as evenly as possible. Pin or clip your edges together to keep them secure until you are ready to sew. On the side where your two lining fabrics come together, we are going to leave a small gap here, and I am going to mark this gap. It is just this big where you see my two green and red clips. We're going to leave that part open, so no seam here, just gonna have a gap so that we are able to turn the bag inside out once we are done sewing our seams. Now that we have all of our clips attached and everything secure, we're going to get ready to sew. You should have something that looks like this. Remember, our pretty sides are facing each other. The ugly sides are outside on both sides.
Pull that thread through the needle slow and kind. Wind up the bobbin, let that rhythm align.
All right, so let's get sewing. Now we're gonna go ahead and sew here, just lines going all the way around the entirety of the two sides. So I am using a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. We're just gonna go around the entire thing.
From scraps to gold, you'll find your way. The empress learns with hands that play. Thread that soul.
Take caution of where we connected the seams for the main fabric and the lining, and then also the contrasting fabric. Those little bumps in between there, you may have to slow down, or if you get stuck or it feels like you're stuck, speed up or press down harder on your presser foot to get over that hump. This is something I was not good at. This is like my 10th bag that I made though. So if you have an issue, it might be worth trying to use a zipper foot instead to see if that will make it easier for you. Also, don't forget to leave that space open on the lining side of the fabric so that we're able to turn the bag inside out.
That soul. Pull that thread through the needle slow and kind. Wind up the bobbin, let that rhythm
Now, this
align.
is my favorite part. I really do enjoy this. You get to really see how all the seams turned out and then how everything's lined up.
That's design divine.
Please remember, sewing is all about practice. So, the more you practice, the better you get. And if everything is not lined up how you anticipated, don't worry. This is only your first try, possibly. So, just keep practicing and it will get easier. So just poke your hand through and then get the corners poked out as much as you can. You may have to use your scissors again here to get the corners all the way out. Poke your corners out with your scissors carefully and intentionally. So the space that you left open on the lining side of your fabric, you are going to go back and you can either do this by your sewing machine or you can do this with hand stitching and just add a running stitch to close that off. I usually save that for the very end whenever I'm all done with the bag. I then go in and iron the bag. Well, honestly, in sewing, you do more pressing versus ironing. You want to make sure there's no wrinkles in your items that you're using to sew with.
Thread that soul.
Pressing is a good way to line up your fabric better so that your seams can line up and lay right. You are now going to add a top stitch, the very top of the bag, and then also the bottom of the band. So I'll show you. You will need to take off the sewing arm of your machine to do this. You have your two top stitches going along the band. Now I'm going to go ahead and just clean up the seams here and just cut off any additional thread that is not needed. So now your bag is basically done. Now we're gonna go ahead and take our seam ripper though and bust open the inside part behind the band to insert the measure tape, or the tape measure, I should say. So find your thread in here. Sometimes it might be a little bit hard to find it. It's easier, like for me, I used white thread, so mine was pretty easy to find, but you're going to just bust open a good, I would say maybe about an inch of your thread in here, just enough so your tape measure tape can fit in.
Every line's a story you sow. From scraps to gold, you'll find your way. The empress learns with hands that play. Thread that soul. Thread that soul. Thread that soul. Pull that thread through the needle slow and kind.
Now it's time to cut your tape measure tape. I'm gonna start with 7 inches. So I'm gonna cut 7 inches off at a time and just do this twice so I can have 2 rows of tape measure tape that measures 7 inches. You want to be very careful when cutting tape measure tape because when you cut the edges, they will be very sharp. So do this with caution. Here I am just rounding out the edges so that the tape measure tape can slide in seamlessly into the bag without ripping the fabric. Then you want to add some kind of tape to the ends. The tape is just going to add a buffer between the tape measure and the fabric again so that your fabric is not getting ripped. Also, this makes the tape measure tape slide in a bit easier into your bag. Once we have our ends of our tape measure tape taped up, we'll go ahead and start inserting this tape measure tape into the area where we open the seam. So it should just slide in. However, you may have to adjust the measurement as you're doing this. I did end up having to cut a little bit more off just because it made the bag an odd shape, so I wanted to make the bag a different shape. So then yeah, I just went ahead and just cut it off, and then you'll have to repeat the taping. And again, be very careful doing this because the tape measure tape is really sharp.
Pull that thread through the needle slow and kind. Wind up the bobbin, let that rhythm align. Feet on the pedal, let your spirit guide.
Once you have your tape measure tape fitted and in there how you want it, test it out, put something in there, and just turn the bag upside down to make sure it doesn't fall out. That is a true test. Just like, when you go to Dairy Queen and they do the blizzard test, you're gonna do the same thing here, and your object should stay inside. And just like that, you have made a bag. Congratulations. Guys, please comment and share what your projects ended up looking like. I would love to see how they turned out. But if you all have gotten any value from watching this video, please remember to hit like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Bye.